much to a gargantuan size, or from scrap to a skyscraper. It can be. But it all starts from not just dreaming about it. You've got to put in the right work. And with the right partner by your side, achieving what you set out to achieve, it can be. Stanbic IBTC, a member of Standard Bank Group.
Business trends beyond the headlines.
We had a substantial amount of capital available to invest.
Business Express on Smooth 98.1 in association with Stanbic IBTC. Stanbic IBTC. It can be.
All right, we're going in. Studio. And you're listening to Smooth, 98.1 Love Music, Love Life. It's 7:30 and it's time for Business Express, brought to you by Stanbic IBTC. My name is Judith Atibi. Joining us live via Zoom, as always, is Rotus. Rotus, good morning to you.
Good morning. It's we didn't time travel. It's 6:30, not 7:30, is it? Just sure. Good morning. Good morning, Judith. Good morning, sisters. And good morning to our special guest, Ayodeji Dawodu, who is an oil and gas research analyst with Stanbic IBTC. Good morning to you, Ayodeji.
Good morning, Rotus. How are you doing today?
Fine, thank you. Fine, thank you. I'm glad to have you join us as well. All right. Anyway, as always, for our listeners, we're going to be talking about the manufacturing sector today, also touching on oil and gas as well. Stanbic IBTC has released their PMI figures, Purchasing Managers Index figures for November. If you have any inquiries, you want to ask any questions, send an email to callme@stanbicibtc.com. Call me at stanbicibtc.com. So I saw that there was a pickup in November versus October, 55 points for the Purchasing Managers Index versus 54.1 in October. Can you talk to us about the drivers behind that?
Yes, really. So what we saw was a joint record increase in new orders, both from the domestic and international markets. That was really the key driver of the strengthening in private sector growth in October. As you already mentioned, we saw PMI coming at 55 points against 54 in October. However, there's still some underlying concerns there as well. In supportive of the points as well was the manufacturers look to be building inventories as well. It could be a mixture of improving sentiments as we go towards the holiday season, but it also be defensive in the sense of they're trying to protect against higher input costs and shortages in the near term.
Thanks, and I'm glad you mentioned input costs. Your PMI report shows that there was a jump in input price inflation for manufacturers. What was behind that?
So it's both as a result of domestic as well as what we're seeing in the global front. So on the global front, first of all, is the supply chain bottlenecks that's really causing that. We're still seeing shortages on the global front in terms of key commodity items, really due to the reopening of the global economy and supply not picking up at the same pace as demand. That's pushing up prices on the global front. And I guess on the domestic front as well, we're still having FX-related issues as well, depreciation into local currency, and the availability of foreign currency as well is also adding to input cost pressures as well.
Great stuff. Lagos, I want you guys to chime in because I want to talk we're talking manufacturing. Ayodeji, what kind of challenges are still facing Nigeria's manufacturing sector?
I would say it's been pretty consistent over the last, let's say, 12 months or so on the FX side. FX liquidity is probably one of the key challenges that continues to hinder productivity and growth in the sector, both in terms of availability as well as the price as well, the price of FX or the FX rate, should I say. You could also add in power as well, but I mean, that's been a continuous challenge as far back as I can remember. Power is a very key input for the manufacturing of pretty much everything. And it's really a hindrance to capacity utilization and output as a result.
All right, and thank you for mentioning power. This talk, yesterday, I mentioned this yesterday with Judith. NAFDAC was talking about, they're saying, okay, they've met some thresholds according to the World Health Organization, and they are looking to possibly produce vaccines in Nigeria sometime in 2022. There's also the whole talk of manufacturing vehicles here. I mean, regardless of whatever it is we want to manufacture in-house, is as you've mentioned, is power the number one determinant for how well that goes?
I would say it would be a key contributor. I mean, you would have to look at power, you'd have to look at the availability of resources, both raw materials and personnel as well. There's a lot of labor, but we still need skilled and experienced labor, or what you may call, or what is demanded from expatriates. We would need that more from the domestic side as well. But as you rightly mentioned, power is still very, very important in terms of our manufacturing capacity.
And when it comes to manufacturing, there seems to be this big push to just do everything in-house, whether it is, drugs. By the way, speaking of NAFDAC, they want to reduce, I think we are importing 70% of all our requirements, what we use for drugs and so on, 70% comes from overseas. They want to reduce that to 30% by 2025. There's this whole talk of, grow what you eat and everything. Are we saying we can manufacture everything? Will imports not still play some type of role? All the other countries around the world, even China, the biggest manufacturer in the world, they still import stuff. So is there not still will imports not play a key role no matter what advancement we want to make in in-house manufacturing?
So I think there will always be imports. As you rightly mentioned, most of the developed countries import, right? I think what needs to be done domestically is to improve the competitiveness of our manufacturing sector. And that involves things like power, personnel, and the likes. In terms of imports itself, I mean, I think what is often highlighted is that we export raw materials and import finished goods and products, and manufacturing is the key link there. So again, manufacturing is essential for improving our trade balance and reducing our imports, particularly on the finished goods, which we can actually have manufactured locally.
I would just love to see that day when we can make improvements. Our supply chain disruptions that we're seeing around the world, is that still going to be a factor in 2022?
It would appear so. I mean, we're pretty much knocking on the doors of 2022 at the moment, and they haven't necessarily eased up. There's still concerns on this new variant that we have and its implications, it could have on lockdowns, which could further potentially make or contribute to a worsening in the supply chain bottlenecks that we're currently experiencing. But I think supply chain bottlenecks are likely to linger, at least in the near term, at the very least. Hopefully, we can start to see that ease towards the end of 2022, as we see a full reopening of the global economy.
Great stuff. I have to, since you have to talk oil and gas. Since we're talking 2022, is the biggest game changer for Nigeria in oil and gas? Is it the Dangote Refinery? Is that what 2022 will be all about if it launches next year?
I think it's positioned to be a key catalyst for Nigeria, given its impact on, as you rightly mentioned previously, imports. It can have a significant impact on that front. It can really boost our manufacturing side and improve our trade balance. There's still question marks on the timing. It's something we've been expecting over the last 3 or 4 years or so. And then there's still question marks on the capacity we may see from the refinery when it starts to produce. It's also hoped that the refinery contributes to the full removal of subsidy as well, something that's a hindrance on government revenues and its spending capacity specifically. So as you mentioned before, it could be a key catalyst for the Nigerian economy come 2022.
I'm glad you also mentioned subsidies. The government seems to be, well, the vibes we're getting, what we've been hearing from it, that subsidy might be taken out in, I don't know, middle of 2022. But can we, I mean, you're not in the government, obviously. And so, I'm not expecting you to predict this or anything, but can we believe that will finally happen now, especially since it's right before an election year? The timing seems a bit sensitive.
Yeah, so I mean, I would agree with that. It does seem a bit sensitive, given the negative impact it could have on consumer spending and general sentiment towards the current administration. I think one of the things that they're looking to do is try to cushion the effect of that with the discussions around supplying or providing an allowance, transportation allowance for the lower income earners to support them during the time of the subsidy removal. I'm not sure if that's been finalized. There's been talks about 5,000 naira allowance, and there's still discussion around that, but that could come into play to kind of cushion the impact of that. But again, there's no perfect time for removing subsidy. If it's not done before the election, the new administration may be unwilling to do it, or if we do see a new administration, may not be willing to do it as soon as they come into power as well. So really, there's no perfect time in removing subsidy. It's just something that needs to be done.
Exactly. Just rip the Band-Aid off or take it off gradually. What about the Petroleum Industry Act? I mean, is that another game changer, or there has too much time passed for that to have an impact in 2022?
So in terms of the PIA, I mean, it's better late than never, right? It's something that I think needed to be done. It's been in the works for maybe about 20 years now. It's past the hurdle, is coming to law. You could argue it's a bit late, rightly so, given what we're seeing in the global economy and a transition to lower carbon emitting energy sources. But I think Africa will still be dependent on fossil fuels to an extent. It may be a transition from less oil to more gas, given that there is an abundance of gas resources on the continent. And the PIA tries to speak to that in terms of improving the fiscal terms for gas monetization, and also trying to support the gas sector with the midstream gas infrastructure fund. But unfortunately, you have to start to look at the implementation and the timelines for the implementation. And that's where I think, there may be some concerns going forward, especially as we're looking and moving towards an election year as well. That may potentially delay the implementation of some of those key provisions in the Act.
All right. Judith, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, we have questions here. This is Benga Kamwen. It goes, do you agree with the assertion by World Bank that fuel subsidy removal won't spike inflation? I believe this is tongue in cheek because prices will go up and it's already trending in that direction. And then it goes on to say the major challenge is power, and inability to source materials locally. We all know where we are on this. Rotus, back in the 70s to 80s, because the locusts ate everything up, we used to make vaccines. That's what he's saying. Yinka Bolu goes, good morning, Rotus. So if Uncle Dangote's refinery is going to be a game changer come 2022, can't we just hold off a bit on this subsidy removal and 5K allowance? Ogene Ochuko comes here with, for manufacturing sector to be vibrant, apart from the power issue, there has to be a policy shift to patronize what is produced locally. Guys, we have a minute.
Well, in a minute, Ayodeji, what do you make? I thought that was very curious that the World Bank, and thank you all for your messages. I thought that was very curious that the World Bank said fuel subsidy won't impact, removing fuel subsidy won't impact inflation. 30 seconds if you can you quickly touch on that?
Yeah, so I think it's the extent of the impact on inflation. So if you just look at the transportation of goods around the country, it's usually done with heavy-duty vehicles, which tend to consume diesel, which is fully deregulated. So that in itself means that the impact of the removal of fuel subsidy on PMS may not have a significant impact. Obviously, there will be some level of impact there, but it may not be as significant as some of us are expecting.
Great stuff. Again, if you've got any inquiries, call me at stanbicibtc.com. Call me at stanbicibtc.com. That's the email address. Thank you all for your messages. Ayodeji Dawodu, oil and gas analyst with Stanbic IBTC. Always a pleasure to have you talking about different sectors. Thank you so much. Judith, appreciate you as well. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Rotus, and thank you to you, Ayodeji. And that brings us to the very end of Business Express, brought to you by Stanbic IBTC. Stick around, coming up at